It doesn't announce itself. It begins with a slight shift, a moment where your heel touches the floor and your body waits a half-second longer to trust it. Not fear, not failure, just the pause before the body reintroduces itself in this new chapter. You find yourself bracing against walls, not for drama, but for grounding. One hand on the countertop, one breath held a little longer as you reach to pick something up. The floor hasn't moved, but you have. And in that shift, something quiet begins to speak. There's a memory. You were visiting an old friend, a woman who used to dance barefoot in her garden. She showed you how she practices balance now, standing on one leg while brushing her teeth, eyes closed, the sink as a silent partner in the ritual. You laughed, softly, but later, you tried it, and your foot began to tremble in the first 5 seconds. That trembling wasn't failure, it was awakening. The body's way of saying, I am still here, but I need your attention now. And that's what balance becomes after 70. Not a performance, but a conversation between your breath and the earth. A soft ritual now lives in your mornings. You stand barefoot for 10 seconds each day, just one foot, eyes steady on nothing. It's not a test, it's a hello, a way of telling your bones, you still belong to this ground. They say balance predicts longevity, but we know better. It doesn't predict life. It reminds you how deeply you're still living, still reaching, still adjusting, still steadying yourself before entering whatever waits beyond the doorway. And some mornings when your foot holds you, even if just for a breath, you feel it. The sacredness of not rushing that first step. It's the jar you used to open without thinking, the newspaper folded cleanly in one hand, the firm press of your palm against someone else's back, comfort given through contact. Now your hands feel different, not weaker, just quieter. The strength hasn't left. It's just become more deliberate. You notice it when passing the sugar jar, when twisting open the garden hose, when shaking someone's hand and feeling the moment you used to lead now ask for mutual trust. There's a memory. Your father, seated in his chair, rolling a small rubber ball in his palm. He wasn't playing. He was remembering, not just his grip, but everything he'd once held. You didn't understand it then, but now your fingers miss what they used to carry. Children, letters, tools, time. You've started holding your own hands more often now, not nervously, tenderly. In the evenings, you sit in your chair, press your palms together, and breathe through your fingertips. A soft ritual, not to test, but to return, because touch is a kind of remembering, and your hands, these hands, still remember how to carry the shape of love, even if they tremble while doing it. Science says grip strength can predict decline, but you've learned it also reveals memory. You once held the weight of others. Now you hold yourself, not out of fragility, but out of devotion. You're still here, still closing jars, even if it takes 2 tries, still reaching, still holding on, still learning that sometimes strength is letting your fingers rest without apology. You notice it most when crossing the street. The light flashes too soon now. The curb feels farther, and your feet, once sure of themselves, seem to ask for permission before taking the next step. You aren't limping, you're listening. To joints that have earned their creak, to knees that whisper before they bend. People pass you more often now. You hear the shuffle behind you, the gentle sidestep, the well-meaning smile. Once that stung. Now you let them pass. Because walking slower is not falling behind. It's choosing to see what speed overlooks. There's a memory. The path behind your old house, lined with stones, pine needles, and that one patch where moss grew soft, like a blessing. You walked that path often, not to get anywhere, just to feel the air between trees. That pace returns to you now, not in the woods, but in parking lots, grocery aisles, the hall between your bedroom and the sink. You move as if the world is still worth noticing, because it is. And that is a ritual now. You walk not to arrive, but to continue, to stay within the motion that still belongs to you. Some mornings you walk without destination. Let your steps match your breath. Let your breath match your willingness to still be part of this world. They say walking speed is a predictor of health, of longevity, but you don't measure it that way anymore. You measure it in moments you didn't rush past, in birdsong, in the soft crack of leaves, in your own shadow walking beside you like a friend who never left. You're not slower. You're still here, and the path, no matter how short, still opens just for you. You still go to bed at the same time, still draw the blanket just beneath the chin, still reach for the same side of the pillow, where dreams used to arrive without needing permission. But now sleep feels different, not absent, just lighter, like it no longer settles in but floats above the sheets, hovering just out of reach. You wake before the birds, before the sky decides on its color, and your body doesn't ache, but it doesn't feel restored either. There's a memory of her beside you. She used to breathe so deeply that the house would sink its silence to her. Now the house is still, but the stillness feels less sacred, more like waiting. They say sleep changes with age, that our cycles shorten, our dreams thin, our bodies forget how to fully surrender. But you've learned that rest isn't always about disappearing. Sometimes it's about being held gently enough to stay where you are. So you change the ritual. You light a low lamp an hour before bed. Let its amber glow settle into the corners. You whisper one word, sometimes a name, sometimes a feeling, into the dark before laying down. Not for magic, not for outcome, but to remind the night you are still here and still open to what softness may come. The sleep you knew is gone, but in its place is something quieter, a kind of rest that no longer insists on ficking you, only on folding around you without asking you to rise different in the morning. Some nights that is enough. Some nights you sleep not to escape, but to remember that your body deserves to be still without guilt. You are not tired from life. You are living still. And that too takes energy. You don't eat like you used to, not out of discipline, not out of neglect, just less, smaller portions, simpler cravings, mornings where toast is enough, and evenings where the smell of soup feels more filling than the taste. It's not that you aren't hungry, it's that hunger lives in a different place now, not in the belly, but in the heart, in the longing for meals that meant more than food. There's a memory. A long table, sleeves rolled, voices rising over the clink of forks. Someone passed you bread without asking. Someone laughed too hard at nothing. You remember the warmth of that moment more vividly than the taste. Now meals are quieter, sometimes alone, sometimes with a chair that still holds the shape of someone who used to sit across from you, and the appetite shifts. You eat not because it's time, but because you know your body still needs presence, still needs care. So you begin again. A soft ritual, holding the first bite longer on your tongue, letting it rest there before you chew. A reminder that nourishment is not speed, that flavor comes not from salt, but from slowing down. They say reduced appetite is a warning, a signal of decline, but you've found it can also be an invitation to pay attention, to prepare smaller plates with greater care, to taste the warmth not just from the food, but from the effort you still choose to offer yourself. Your body still speaks, not loudly, but with clarity. And today, it asked only for something warm, something simple, and someone kind enough to listen. So you sit, you chew slowly, and in the quiet between bites, you feel it. Not the fullness of the stomach, but the remembering of what it means to feed what is still living inside you. Somewhere along the way, you began carrying something you never chose to lift. Not a trauma, not a headline, just the slow accumulation of worry no one asked you to release. It settled in your chest, low and steady, like a stone placed there by a version of yourself too busy caring for others to notice it had grown heavier. You feel it in the pause before a phone call, in the slight clench of your jaw when the world asks too many things in a single day. Even in quiet moments, you catch yourself bracing, as if life, like a wave, might crash without warning. You never named it stress. That word always felt too modern, too sharp. But you know what it is. It's the residue of years spent being strong without a place to soften. There's a memory. You were standing in the kitchen, a spoon in your hand, stirring nothing. The soup had long been done. You weren't thinking. You were remembering all the ways you had stayed calm so others could collapse. That night you sat down, placed your hand on your chest, and took one full breath. It didn't fix anything, but it felt like someone had finally placed a warm cloth over something you didn't realize was burning. Now that's the ritual. Each day when the weight returns, and it does, you sit quietly, hand to heart, and breathe. Not deeply, just honestly, a breath that doesn't reach for change, only acknowledgement. The body keeps so many stories that were never spoken. And after 70, you've learned that the most powerful thing you can say to yourself is, I'm still here, even when I'm tired of holding everything. And in that sentence, the weight shifts. Not gone, just shared for a moment with the air. You stared at the phone for longer than you meant to, not because you didn't care, but because reaching out feels heavier now than it used to. There's a moment before the call, before the message, when silence feels safer, not out of fear, out of fatigue. You think, what would I even say? And then you remember how many conversations you once had that needed no language at all. There's a memory, an afternoon long ago, a walk with someone you loved, no words exchanged, just the rhythm of steps, the sound of gravel, and the way your shadows merged on the pavement. That was connection, not a statement, but a presence. So today you press call, not to talk, but to say, I was just thinking of you. And that's the ritual now. Once a week, you reach out, even if it's just to listen, even if the voice on the other end doesn't always respond the way it used to. You've learned that love after 70 asks for fewer words and deeper attention, not fixing, not advising, just staying long enough for someone to feel less alone in their breath. They say social connection extends life, but that's not why you do it. You do it because the heart still remembers what it feels like to be held in someone's pause. And now you offer that pause to others, not because you're strong, but because presence is the softest strength you've ever known. And when you hang up, you don't feel drained. You feel returned, as if by listening you remembered the sound of your own heartbeat. Still here, still open, still willing to be reached back. They weren't signs, really, not warnings, not predictions, just quiet clues the body began leaving for you when it knew you were finally listening. A tremble in the foot, a slower step, a hand that remembered too much to hold on as tightly. You didn't rush to fix them, you honored them instead. And that changed everything. Now your mornings begin slower. You stand barefoot for a moment longer. You breathe before speaking. You taste more, need less. And when you forget, which happens, you remember that even forgetting can be a form of rest, a soft pause between the rituals that keep you connected to what matters. You don't fear these sins anymore. You read them like letters left under your pillow by the person you're still becoming. And each one says, you're still here, you're still becoming, and there is no rush. So tonight, if your fingers are tired or your breath feels shallow, place one hand on your chest. Let the body speak. It will not shout. It never has. But if you listen, it will say what it's been whispering all along. You are still so very alive.